Today, I, Radhika Kataria, on behalf of Law Joint Organization, welcome you all to this webinar on misuse of dowry provisions. I would like to welcome Honorable Mr. Justice K.G. Balakrishnan, sir, former 37th Chief Justice of India, as Chief Justice for today's session. We warmly welcome you, sir. He was the first judge in Kerala to become the Chief Justice of Supreme Court. Sir was sworn in as the Chief Justice of India on 14th January 2007 by the President Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. After his retirement in 2010, Sir served as the chairperson in Human Rights Commission. Now, I would like to welcome our guest of honor for today's session, Mr. Vivek Narayan Sharma, sir. He is the ex-Joint Secretary of Supreme Court. He is also the president of the Society for Criminal Justice and National Advisor to Ladli Foundation. He is consultant, convener, and patron for eminent social, political outfits and law journals in India. He is one of the most popular, most discussed, and most read columnists for Times of India and Economic Times, and contributor of articles to the portal popular among legal fraternity called Bar and Bench. He has filed and successfully argued many pro bono cases of public importance and provides free legal aid to women of marginalized societies. Now, at next, we would like to welcome Ms. Juhi Arora, ma'am. She is Advocate of Supreme Court of India, and Mr. Jinesh Singh Soni, sir. He is Advocate of Rajasthan High Court. These both are keynote speakers for today's session. We warmly welcome you.
Sir, good evening, sir. Ravi Mallimatia, sir.
Oh, good evening, good evening.
Sir, how are
Juhi
you?
Arora. Ms. Juhi Arora, ma'am, is the founder of Juhi Arora and Associates and has been practicing for more than a decade in Supreme Court, Delhi High Court, and various district courts. She is the member in the advisory board of Lloyd Law College, Greater Noida, sharing the bench with distinguished senior advocates like Mr. K. Venkatramani, Ms. Geeta Luthra, and Mr. Naveen Jaggi. Ma'am is also a legal panelist in Ethical Committee of Genes Cast Diagnostics and also a sister of Chain of Eye Live Hospitals by the name of Seeds of Innocence. She has also been awarded with National Women's Excellence Award. That's a very great of honor for our country, and we would like to congratulate you, ma'am, for the same. Mr. Jinesh, now I would like to welcome Mr. Jinesh Singh Soni, sir, who has appeared as counsel in some leading cases of Ajmer, which is Ajmer SP Rajesh Meena corruption case, Madhyamik Sikha Board scam, Nareen Sahni UIT chairman case, and many more. He has also drafted a number of petitions for indigent persons for seeking legal aid, and some of them are accepted by Supreme Court Legal Service Committee. Sir has worked as President Law Association and Government Law College, and he was also elected as Executive Board Member and Bar Association in Ajmer in 2018. Now, at the end, I would like to invite our founder Rajendra Pal Singh, sir, to welcome the guest and start the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Radhika. Good evening, everyone. I welcome all the dignitaries to the webinar. I welcome Honorable Mr. Justice K.G. Balakrishnan, former Chief Justice of India. Welcome, Lordship. I welcome Mr. Vivek Narayan Sharma, ex-Joint Secretary, SCORA. Welcome, sir. I welcome Advocate Juhi Arora, ma'am, Supreme Court of India. Welcome, ma'am. I welcome Advocate Jinesh Singh Soni, Rajasthan High Court. Welcome, sir. I request Lordship to kindly inaugurate the session.
Hello, audible?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Rajendra Pal Singh and distinguished colleagues who participate in this webinar. So, very important, the subject has been chosen by him for discussion. The 498A, that is one where the, I don't know how many cases have been filed under 498A, but this is something which is earlier there was an allegation that women are cruelly treated by the husband. So they are driven to commit suicide. They are suffering harassment, and this has become a social menace. To prevent the social menace, law has made certain changes. So that is this 498A was thus inserted in our penal code in 1983. There are series of the amendments they were made to protect the interests of women. 498A. Then another provision also is the dowry death. That is also one provision similar to this 498A. That is 304B. That was also inserted in the Indian Penal Code in 1986. So there were after the Nirbhaya inside, he also amended drastically the 354. There are the outraging the modesty of women, that was amended 354 A, B, C, D. New provisions, new, in fact, new penal sections are introduced to cover all sorts of violations against women. So it was also made in the matter of recording of 161 statement. It was also made it peremptory that the 160, there is an allegation of this sort of violence is there. There's the 164 statement should be recorded. Then it was also stated that certain provisions, that is rape, 354 and connected women related, if the case is registered and the FIR is not registered, it was made an offense. And if there is any flaw in the investigation, that was also made punishable under this. So to protect the interests of women, various provisions were introduced in the criminal law. Now today the discussion is 498A, where it is very important to know what is the scope and ambit of this provision. 498A, where the husband or the relative of a husband of a woman subject such woman to cruelty shall be punished with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 3 years and shall also be liable to fine. Then the cruelty has been defined, explained in detail. What is this cruelty means? Willful conduct which is of such a nature as is likely to give the woman to commit suicide. If the woman is driven to such a situation that he has no other option but to commit suicide, that is cruelty. Or to cause grave injury or danger to the life, limb or health. So even if it is not commit suicide, so she was driven to such a situation, she may cause injury to his injury to life, limb or health, causing such injury, driven to such a situation, then that is also cruelty. Then the harassment of a woman, where such harassment is a view to coercing her to any or any person related to her to meet any unlawful demand. So if there is any unlawful, his harassment is of such a nature that she is the unlawful demand may be for property, demand may be for any valuable security, demand may be for any unlawful demand for any property or valuable security, or is on account of failure by her or any person related to her to meet such demand. So this is the cruelty has been explained, such a harassment, such a conduct on the part of the husband or relative of the husband. Then that it comes within the 498A. So then this is also to be read along with there is another similar provision is the dowry death. That is the dowry death also is to be a 304B. For the woman is married and she commits suicide within or he dies with any burns. That is a common practice, common incident which occurs. Nowadays it is less. It appears that is the stove burst and she died. They got injuries and they caused by burns or bodily injury or occurs otherwise than under normal circumstances. She dies within a period of 7 years of the marriage. She dies not under normal circumstances. She dies of burn injury or some other. And 7 years of her marriage. And it is shown that soon before her death, she was subjected to cruelty or harassment. That cruelty or harassment is to be, that definition, that details is to be found in 498A. That is the type of cruelty and the dowry. We have to see the definition in the section 2 of the Dowry Prohibition Act. Then, in connection with any demand for dowry, such death shall be called dowry death, and such husband or relative shall be deemed to have caused her death. That is also the husband is deemed to have caused death. There is a presumption in favor of the husband. Or we have to also to notice that the punishment is severe, not like 498A. The dowry death shall be punished with imprisonment for a term which shall not be less than 7 years, minimum 7 years, and which may extend to imprisonment for life. So the life imprisonment also could be a punishment for dowry death. So the husband, within a period of 7 years, wife dies of burn injury, and the presumption is against the husband. That is very crucial. Sometimes the husband may not have nothing to do with his death and with her death. So the presumption, died of burn injury and not under normal circumstances. So these are all areas where it is difficult to, and once the woman dies, then the relatives of the woman will be for the blood of the husband. So there is all these circumstances are to be carefully scrutinized by the judges. Judges who deal with these cases should be very, very careful in analyzing the evidence. There is a presumption, and that also there is Evidence Act also. There is a presumption in the as regards the evidence dowry death. There is a presumption under the Evidence Act. That is also one has to keep it in mind. The Evidence Act in that is also, it is 113B. When the question is whether a person had committed a dowry death of a woman, and it is shown that soon before her death, such woman had been subjected by such person to cruelty or harassment, or in connection with a demand for death, the court shall presume that such person had caused the dowry death. It is a serious, the nature, presumption is of serious nature. Whether committed, when the question is whether a person has committed death or not, if it is shown that soon before any demand for any harassment as regards the dowry, then it is presumption that he caused the death. The court shall presume that such person had caused the dowry death. So the prosecution's duty, the prosecution has to prove the case. The Wilmington's old case, English traditional case of R versus Wilmington, that theory of prosecution has to prove the case. That is also made. It is inroad is made into the old duty is on the prosecution to prove the case. And it is now the burden is shifted to the accused. So, and there is a old case also where a charge is framed under 304B, dowry death, and there was no sufficient evidence to prove that there was demand for dowry or anything or anything. Then such a person, that facts are very, very curious. Facts are there. At the time of marriage, the wife was given some ornaments, then property and all. Then the husband wanted some property to be converted into his name. So that was the only. So the property is of the wife. So he wanted that the property to be converted, to be sold to him, or the name is to be changed. So the ingredients of 304B was not proved, but the court said, even though it was not the dowry death is not proved, the 498A, he would be convicted under 498A, the cruelty. Because there is a demand for that ingredients are there. It could be, even though there is no charge under 498A, the charge was under the 304B, the accused could be convicted. So when you study these provisions, the students should pay attention to 304B and 113B, then 498A, what are the ingredients, what is the implications, and it is to protect the interest of the women. So it is this 498A is not a compoundable offense, that is made specifically not made compoundable, because once it is made compoundable, the women being a weaker section of the society, the male partner who has got supervening influence over the women will make her to succumb to the demand, and cases would be easily compounded. That is why there was a very vehement demand to make these offenses compoundable by large sections of the lawyers fraternity. But it was, I think, is still I could not made extensive research on this subject. Many of the things are, because the old memory, I am just culturally went through these provisions, that's all. So I was also, so I think the panelists will discuss the various aspects of these offense, and that will throw light on the students. If anything is there, any matter is there, of course, I will continue to be a part of this for a little more time. So thank you. With these words, I formally inaugurate the webinar and invite all our distinguished jurists to participate in it and give their free and fair comments on these offenses. That will be enlightening to the students. It will create new knowledge areas, and the horizon of knowledge of the students will expand to such an extent that they will be able to meet the all situations in their profession when they are doing criminal work. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lordship, for your commendable words. We are really very thankful to you for your precious time what you have given to us. Now I invite our guest of honor, Mr. Vivek Narayan Sharma. Please, sir.
Thank you, Lawjay, and thank you, Rajendra Palji, and Honorable Mr. Justice K.G. Balakrishnan, sir, and Ms. Juhi Arora, and Mr. Jitesh Soni. Most welcome on the platform today. Of course, this is a very relevant and important topic for the society. though the name of the topic is misuse of dowry laws in India. And largely, if we see that it is not only the dowry law, if we look at the larger perspective, it is a women law that is required to be discussed on a larger scale and repetitively, so that the misuse or abuse of those laws could be cured, and at the same time, the redressal could be provided to the righteous persons. So the Law Joint has been doing this wonderful exercise for last 1 year, and I have been able to participate in some of them. And my congratulations to Mr. Rajinder Pal ji and Radhika today, who is convening this program today. So when we talk about the topic with regard to the misuse of dowry laws, already Justice Balakrishnan has provided the insights, ingredients, provisions which are relevant for the purpose. What we are talking about today is misuse. How do we say misuse? Is the law unfair? That it is called misuse. So unfairness is not the perspective here. Misuse means it is unfair. But is the law unfair? Can we term the law as unfair? So if we analyze from that perspective, we will find that the law is not unfair. It is about the misuse, that there are some ways that there is a possibility of misuse of a law, and particularly when we are talking about the dowry law here. So that means once there is a misuse, then it also affords an opportunity to the parliamentarians, to the legal luminaries, judges, academicians, to discuss how the cure to the misuse can be provided. So all this discussion that we lead today, and there have been so many other discussions in the past days. So the discussions have to be on the tangent that we want to bring a cure to the misuse. So till the time we are only discussing and we are unable to provide that cure. So the discussion is merely it is a non-tangible thing which is not converting into a real benefit to the society. So of course, means somewhere tomorrow some of you would be in the parliament, some of you would be judges, and some of you would be in academics. So we need to really have this kind of attitude that once we find out that there is misuse of anything, any provision of law, and the misuse, the quantum of misuse is very high or large, then the redressal is required to be found out who are the misuse. And till the time the redressal is not there, so mere talking about the misuse is just not enough. So we need to really go about it. We need to iron out the problems. So this is what about means I wanted to say that law is not unfair, but there is a possibility of misuse. So when we talk about the dowry law, means the dowry law, it starts the Dowry Prohibition Act, which was enacted in 1961. So it provided the definition in section 3 provided that taking or giving dowry is a crime. But then it is, our traditions are also coming in usage. Not all the incidents are getting reported even today. Even in the civilized society, in the high society, mid-level society, and lower society, what I have confronted, I have seen at a very large scale, that even today, people are giving and taking dowries. And despite the fact that there is dowry law. So that means the society, the consciousness of the society has not adopted that law. So once it is so that there is a law and the society is moving in a totally different tangent, which is the 180-degree parallel opposite to the position in law, then what should be done by the authorities? So the authorities are required to enforce. And how do we enforce? Before we enforce, there is a requirement of large scale education. Sorry. So before we enforce, of course, you need to sensitize people that they are able to adopt the law. You need to give them benefit. You need to make them understand the benefit of following a particular provision of law or the law. So our governments have failed somewhere, that they are not able to provide that kind of umbrella to the law which was required for its implementation. So dowry prohibition law, it's a complete failure in my terms, because it has been enacted in 1961. Until now, the society by and large is giving and asking and taking dowries. So the very purpose, the very nature for which the dowry law was enacted has just gone for a toss. The second aspect of the law is that it is used extensively. But where there is some event, some mishappening has occurred, or the other party has to arm twist the male party. So there is a requirement of law, which is quoted in several judgments also, which is used in FIRs. For what purpose? There are twin-fold purposes. When actual incident has happened, somewhere some death has occurred, some grave injury has occurred. So therefore, Dowry Prohibition Act is applied. Along with that, cruelty by husband and relatives is applied. Various other laws, maybe if there is a possibility, there is a death, and 304B has been applied. So there is one incident where this is applied. The other incident is when there is, means the arm twisting actions have to be initiated by the female party against the male party. Maybe there is nothing has happened, but then, so that second portion is the actual misuse. All other part means, one, the failure of implementation of law. That's first part. Second part is that there is a serious injury which has occurred to the female party where the law is applied. Then the third part is where there is nothing has happened, but the law is there. So therefore, somebody has to be brought into the clutches of law. So that's where the misuse lies. So when we talk about the misuse, so of course, there are to be possible cures. And so many times Supreme Court and various high courts and even trial courts have found out that there has been some misuse of law, and they have quoted extensively on this subject. So what is required by us as society, by us as academicians, as a student of law, it is that we try to find the solutions, and we start implementing those solutions. We start start informing the people. Lawyers have a special duty in society. Lawyers and judges have very, very special duties. What no one can do, lawyers and judges can provide. So being law student, you and I, we all have those kind of responsibility, which we have to adhere. So there's going to be very good discussions, I suppose, because there are excellent speakers now, Ms. Juhi Arora and Mr. Jinesh Soni. So with these words, I would bid my goodbye to you all, my best wishes, and have a wonderful evening with Ms. Juhi Arora and Mr. Jinesh Soni, and my best wishes. And I'm always seeking blessings to Mr. Justice Balakrishnan. Thank you so much for giving me time and opportunity to present my views today. Thank you, the Law Joint, and thank you, Rajinder Pal Singh ji and Radhika. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your kind words. We are really honored with these your words. Now I please call Advocate Juhi Arora ma'am to please start the session.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your such a kind words. Justice Balakrishnan sir, Vivek Narayan Sharma sir, and Manjeet sir, thank you so much. So that we are here for a topic which is actually so much in, and it is a topic which we are actually listening here and there, maybe inside the society, inside the like schools, colleges, everywhere, or some or the other highlights are always come to our ears that something has happened with this and that. So thank you for organizing such an event where I can be a part of it and express my views. As very well said by both the dignitaries, that misuse is actually has to be treated from ourselves. Like it is there in the society, and it's our choice and it's our own wish and will which we can curb this, apart from which judiciary and legal people are helping us. So I would only showcase some of the points which which will help the students here to actually know that the judiciary, the legal system is also working to curb all these misuse of dowry laws. So misuse of laws, which is basically women laws that, well, Mr. Vivek sir said that it is 498A and Dowry Prohibition Act. These are all comes under the dowry women laws. So what is the misuse? How can we say that these laws are being misused? You know, actually these laws were being implemented because it was introduced in 1983 in IPC, because there was heavy uh, victimization of the woman was been happening. But today things have been twisted. Now, as sir said, that the women are the weaker section. Now I believe that women are becoming strong. That is why misuse has also started. So in 2017, just to curb this, Supreme Court has taken a stand by asking by giving a good judgment in which they have asked the states to set up a family welfare committee. In 2017, there was a double bench judgment which has been given, and every state had set up a family welfare committee, in which what was the use of that family welfare committee? This committee will speak to the parties, and the parties who are in connection, like the accused and as well as the complainant. They will be called, they will be asked, they will be time would be given them to have the settlement, and in that case no arrest will be made till the time the committee submits the report. So that was the major agenda of this judgment, to give to instruct the states to have the welfare committee. But then in 2018, there was a judgment, which the same judgment, Rajesh Sharma versus Union of India, it was been again further twisted to the aspect that now the whole object which come is basically that it was a three-bench judgment which came in 2018 under the supervision of Chief Justice Deepak Mishra ji, wherein I would quote the specific lines of the judgment, which says that there is no need for a family welfare committee to examine the complaints, and the police officers, based on facts of the case governed by legal provisions, will decide. It means that then after this 2017 and 2018, they have modified the judgment which was there in Rajesh Sharma versus Union of India. It says that now police will have the power, and the DCP will have the power to see that whether the arrest is required in the present case or not. So now they have basically pointed out some provisions in this judgment. One is that Supreme Court restored the police powers in the dowry cases, whereas in 2017 it was immediate arrest. That once you have made the complaint, and family welfare committee will be set up, and immediately they can arrest you. But in 2018, this judgment had made a significant step towards the curb the misuse of dowry laws, the women laws. What was that? That Supreme Court had restored the police powers in dowry cases, number one. Then court also directed here in DCP to the states to ensure that the investigating officers in under 498A, Dowry Prohibition Act, should be very much having the rigorous training. So that was the second efficient step which was being taken through this judgment. Then first, that they have restored the powers to the police, and the DCP would specifically examine the case, and also he would be whosoever IO or investigation officer is being appointed for the particular case would be having the proper rigorous training would be given to these people how to tackle the situations. Then they protected pre-arrest or anticipatory bails in this matters. So third provision which was there in the judgment, which helped to curb the misuse of dowry laws, the 498, is that there would be anticipatory provisions. What is the anticipatory provisions? Is basically the bail which can be granted to you before arrest. If you have a mere apprehension of the FIR, you can approach the Honorable Court for having the anticipatory bail. And as far as the facts and circumstances has been concerned, and the case is fit for it, the court will grant the anticipatory bail to the particular accused. And in case if the FIR is lodged, so he won't be directly arrested, or his family member won't be directly arrested, whereas he would be given, or his family would be given, a reasonable time to apply again for a bail. So that is the difference between the regular bail and the anticipatory bail. So this is the provision which was again given in 2018. They have made, because in our criminal procedure also, we have the main funda is that it is, we have, bail is the, jail is the exception and bail is the general formula. So in our cases, whenever we have moved for the bail also, the unless and until the crime is heinous and the whole facts have been properly with the evidences has been given with the evidences, it is general exception that bail should be given and jail is the general exception, we would say. So this judgment was being again granted, and the Rajesh Sharma versus Union of India was being modified in by the 2017 in 2018 on the NGO called Nyay Dhar. Nyay Dhar was filed in the Supreme Court to sharpen the 498A laws in 2018. So this is what I've come to explain, that this is the basic step of the judiciary here, where they have almost made so much provisions, have also given so much explanation, so that there should be a curb in the misuse of these kinds of laws. Then Dowry Prohibition Act, what is that? Basically, giving and receiving is actually a dowry offense. It's not that only receiving is an offense, whereas giving is also an offense. However, we do not file a complaint against the family of the girl generally, because ultimately dowry prohibition itself, they attracts the Dowry Prohibition Act, because once you are giving the dowry and the other one is receiving and you're claiming to take the dowry, then ultimately you have also given, so you are also attracted the offenses. So the Dowry Prohibition Act attracts you also, no? But ultimately, because we are not filing any complaints against girls' family or the side, and in fact, even if we file it also, they are not taking cognizances. Basically, the magistrate is not likely to take cognizance on these kinds of these kinds of complaints. There is one of my case wherein my client has specifically asked me to file a complaint under Dowry Prohibition Act because the FIR was not being lodged. He was trying to get the FIR lodged against the family of the girl, that because if I have received it, so they have given, so they should also be, FIR should also be lodged against them. But it was not being lodged by the police. So ultimately, I have to go to the magistrate under 156 to get the FIR lodged. But ultimately, the case go on and it was not being to that mark. So that is why these cases are not much into the picture, because we are not taking these kinds of steps. So, you know, as far the National Crime Records Bureau, NCRB, data, it's almost 2 lakh people are arrested over dowry offenses in 2012. And almost 14.4% of accused were convicted. So I would say that now the acquittal rate has become more and more, and conviction rate has become less. Because now we are day to day are emerging, the women are also coming at the level of the men. So both are working, both are very much coming with the betterment of the society. So now ego clashes are more between the husband and wife, and the mental torture has also become a very common problem rather than a physical torture. And it is from both the sides. We can't say only men is torturing the woman, it's the women also who are torturing the men. So now acquittal rate has become more and more in these generations rather than the conviction rate. You know, when false police complaint is being done, that would actually result in mental cruelty. That is a specific judgment which has been came numerously by the Supreme Courts and the courts, and they have actually come in the public eye in coming newspapers and everywhere, which says that if you have filed of any false complaint, any false police complaint by the wife, it would result in the mental quality, which would lead to a loss of reputation and standing in the society. So exactly what I mean to say here is that if you're filing any false complaint, so whatever years he would, or the person, the accused and the family would be dragged for litigation, would actually is a loss to their reputation. It's a loss to their standing in the society. It's a kind of a defamation also, we can say. I would come to those points that what are the benefits and what are the rights of the men have if he faces these kinds of complaints. So these are the basic points which I'm focusing here, that in case if some man is facing the false complaint and you have the proper evidences to that respect, to that regard, so you can easily avail some of the remedies of legal remedies. What are those legal remedies? Let us talk about that also, because mostly we always talk that what are the legal rights which the woman has. She can file domestic violence, she can go and file for 98A complaint, she can go to National Commission, she can go to 125 CRPC, she can file n number of cases for suit for recovery and what not, what all not. There are n number of cases, n number of legal rights which have been there for the woman. But what are the men rights? What if tomorrow if men come to me and ask, or come to you and ask you that my wife has filed n number of complaints against me and they all are false, what remedy I have? What should I do? How should I be out of this old scenario, and how should she be punished about it? So some points I would here discuss one by one. What is that? One is like, if somebody faces a false complaint and if you have a perfect evidence, or you have a something has been, and if you have been acquitted for that particular cases, and or you have a particular evidence, because now it's not, no, we are again coming one by one. One is that you have the evidence and the case is still going on. One case is that the wife has filed a complaint and you have the evidences which shows that the wife has filed a false complaint and this is the right thing which I can rebut it. And the other point is that you had the evidences, but you have been now acquitted also, and you have not done anything earlier while the litigation was going. So what exactly remedies you have? Even if you are litigating, or if you have not, if you have been acquitted also in any of the case, you have the remedies. That one is, if you are litigating and the FIR is lodged against you and your family, you can easily approach for a quashing of an FIR. What is exactly quashing is like, you can go for a quashing, that is called to quash the allegations, to quash the sections of FIR which is against you in the High Court, after showing the court the perfect evidences you have and making the court understood and convinced that the FIR has been lodged falsely against you and it doesn't stand anywhere. So in that case, you can very well go for a quashing of an FIR. Then secondly, what another remedy you have? The another remedy you have is like, if your case is pending and you feel that she has filed a false complaint against you, you can easily go for a perjury application. That is called 191 IPC, which says that any statement you have made on oath which is false, then in that case, it's a perjury. And you can very well go for a perjury application. You can file the perjury application. In one of my case in Supreme Court, where we have the wife has moved for the transfer petition, I was for the husband side there. So she has filed a fake address stating that she is residing here and she wants the transfer of the case from that A to B. However, she was not residing in the present address where she has stated on oath in the petition. So my client had the evidence that she is not staying here, and this is the latest affidavit or some other document, I don't remember right now, has come across to me, which clearly says that she is not residing here and she has stated falsely on it. So now it's my duty to make him understand that you have an option, that you have a legal remedy here. What is that legal remedy? Is a perjury. That I have moved a perjury application before the court, and the court has treated my application. They have taken cognizance on it and they have issued notice to it. So what I mean to say is that these other remedies are available even for anybody. I would say now, even for the wife side also, if man is falsely stating, or if somebody is falsely stating on oath. So one is this remedy. Then third is that there are kino of judgments which says that any false complaint filed by the woman wife, which now has been which has come up to be false in nature, would result in mental cruelty. That's a very clear-cut funda, and you can easily go for divorce under this specific ground, and you do not have to prove any other cruelty. This will itself be a valid cruelty point, which says that if in case your complaint is found to be false, then in that case the Supreme Court has divorce in the cases. Then what else you have? Then you have the power to file and you have the legal right to file the defamation against the wife. Then what is defamation? Defamation is that something जहाँ पे आपकी इज्जत की हानि है, जहाँ पे आपकी गुडविल को डिफेम किया जा रहा है, that is called defamation. So in that case, there is a judgment in 2020 also, which came up in newspapers, that wife can have been noticed on the defamation case filed by the husband, because she has filed the fake complaints against him and the in-laws. So these are some provisions, and this will actually help you in case if the dowry laws has been misused. You be positive, because you have the other legal right available for you, and you will be more helpful, because ultimately they have made themselves make themselves in a bad situation now. So everything is possible. In case if somebody has misused the law against you, then you have the very good probability to use that, and it can be backfired to them. So it is now the time where we can stand for it, and we can actually use it against them only, whatever if they are using against you. So these are the things which you can do, like defamation can be filed, the divorce can be granted on the ground that the wife has filed a fake complaint. Then you can move for a FIR quashing. Then you can go for a perjury application also. So I think I've covered almost most of the points. If something is left out from me, then I think Jitesh sir is also there. I'm so sorry if I'm not saying the right name. So the next speaker would be giving you throwing some more light on the particular topic. But I think if something is being misused, we should always take it in a positive way, and we have so many other things to give it in the same manner. So these are the things I think. Thank you, sir. In case if some questions are there, they can ask me in the end of the session, I guess.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for your enlightening words. Now I welcome Jinesh Singh Soni sir to start the session.
Thank you, Rajendra ji, Madam Juhi, Vivek sir, and Justice Balakrishna. आप सब ने लीगल प्रोविजंस को जो है इनलाइटन किया और ये बताया कि किस तरह से कानून काम कर रहा है, किस तरह से कानून का अनफेयर यूज जो है हो रहा है, और किस तरह से अमेंडमेंट्स की जो है रिक्वायरमेंट है। पर मैं एक बात जो है आप सबसे कहना चाहूंगा कि वास्तव में जो कानून पार्लियामेंट से बन के आता है, या माननीय सुप्रीम कोर्ट से बन के आता है, या माननीय उच्च न्यायालय से बन के आता है, वो कितना पुलिस के द्वारा या ट्रायल कोर्ट्स के द्वारा जो है फॉलो किया जाता है। मेरे पास एज फार एज माई एक्सपीरियंस कंसर्न कई जजमेंट है जहां मजिस्ट्रेट ये लिखते हैं कि माननीय सुप्रीम कोर्ट का निर्णय हम पे लागू नहीं होता है, माननीय उच्च न्यायालय का निर्णय हम पे लागू नहीं होता है, और ये बात खुद संज्ञान में सुप्रीम कोर्ट की कई बार आती है, इसके बावजूद भी जो है एक्शन नहीं होता है। जब हम बेस लेवल पे ही जो है कमजोर हैं, तो हम ये कैसे कह सकते हैं कि आज जो डाउरी लॉ है, जो उसका मिसयूज है, उसको हम प्रिवेंट कर पाएंगे। दूसरी इंपॉर्टेंट बात, आज आप थाने जाएं, मैं रियलिटी बता दूं, 41A के आने से पहले और 41A के आने के बाद, हालांकि इस पे कानून है अरनेश कुमार का, फिर भी आज इच्छा है आईओ की, जिस केस में पैसे आ गए तो वहां तो 41A मिल जाएगा, जिस केस में पैसे नहीं आए वहां पर इतना हैरेसमेंट होगा, लड़की वाले दबाव बनवाएंगे, लड़के वाले और उसके घर वाले जो है, इतना हैरेसमेंट होगा। ये रियलिटी और ग्राउंड लेवल की बात जो है मैं बताना चाह रहा हूं आपको। मैं आज कानून बहुत सारे हैं, चाहे 498 हो, चाहे 406 हो, चाहे DB एक्ट हो, चाहे DP एक्ट हो, या ऐसे कानून जो महिलाओं को विशिष्ट प्रोटेक्शन जो है प्रोवाइड करते हैं। पर जरा सोचिए, हम कई निर्णय जो है आज पढ़ते हैं, चाहे फेसबुक हो, चाहे अदर सोशल मीडिया हो, चाहे लोकल अखबार हो, कि कोई महिला जो है घर से भाग गई, अडल्ट्री में जी रही है, उसके बाद भी कोर्ट ने उसको मेंटेनेंस अवार्ड कर दिया। कई बार कोर्ट के डिसीजन भी ऐसे आते हैं कि अडल्ट्री में रहना जो है अभिशाप नहीं है, महिला मेंटेनेंस के लिए एंटाइटल्ड। तो क्या वास्तव में ऐसे डिसीजन किसी रूप में प्रोटेक्शन दे पाएंगे? एक बहुत बड़ा क्वेश्चन मार्क है। पर कोई भी इस पे जो है बात करना नहीं चाहता है। सिर्फ हम ये चाहते हैं कि चर्चा कर लें, यहाँ 1 घंटा बैठ जाएंगे, इसमें CJ आ गए, गेस्ट ऑफ ऑनर आ गए, बड़े बड़े एडवोकेट्स आ गए, पर रियलिटी में क्या हो रहा है ये समझना होगा। आज आप किसी गांव वाले से बात करें जो बिल्कुल ग्रामीण परिवेश का है, किसी गरीब आदमी से बात करें, उसके लिए न्याय की वैल्यू क्या है? आंसर इज 0। एक्चुअली होता क्या है कि जब कोई आदमी कोर्ट आता है तो क्या वास्तव में उसको न्याय मिल पाता है? आंसर इज नो। खुद NCR भी कहती है कि जो कानून महिलाओं के लिए बने हैं उसमें से केवल 10% कानूनों में 10% महिलाएं जो है वो सही यूज कर रही हैं, 90% महिलाएं जो है कानून का मिसयूज कर रही हैं। जब ये बात संज्ञान में आती है सुप्रीम कोर्ट के, हाई कोर्ट के, तो उन पर कार्रवाई क्यों नहीं होती है? आज आप लोग ये कहते हैं कि साहब प्रोविजन है कंपनसेशन का, आप लीगल कार्रवाई करें। जब संज्ञान में बात आ गई है कि वास्तव में मिसयूज हो रहा है, तो हाई कोर्ट या सुप्रीम कोर्ट अपनी इनहेरेंट पावर्स का एक्सरसाइज करते हुए उन महिलाओं को पनिश क्यों नहीं करती है? ये बहुत बड़ा क्वेश्चन मार्क है। मैं ये नहीं कहता हूं कि हर महिला गलत है, पर जो गलत कर रही है उसके लिए पनिशमेंट क्यों नहीं? सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट बात है। कानून का ऑब्जेक्ट जो है बहुत ही अच्छा था। आर्टिकल 14 को यदि हम देखते हैं, स्पेशली इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, वो ये कहता है कि इक्वलिटी बिफोर लॉ, कि कानून के सामने चाहे पुरुष हो, चाहे महिला हो, चाहे बच्चे हो, चाहे कोई भी हो, इक्वल होंगे। और आर्टिकल 15 सब क्लॉज 3 स्पेशल पावर देता है पार्लियामेंट को टू मेक लॉ टू प्रोटेक्ट द वुमेन। क्या वास्तव में लॉ प्रोटेक्शन कर रहे हैं या महिलाओं के हाथ में एक टूल दे रहे हैं कि आप इसका यूज कीजिए, किसी व्यक्ति को जो है जेल भिजवाएं और अल्टीमेटली उससे जो है पैसा एक्सटॉर्ट करें? रिसेंटली हमने कई ऐसे एग्जांपल देखे कि जहां महिलाओं ने जो है कानून का मिसयूज करा, उसके बाद भी जुडिशरी खामोश क्यों? ये एक बहुत बड़ा प्रश्न चिन्ह है। कई बार हम देखते हैं कि लोग मांग करते हैं पुरुष आयोग की या महिला आयोग वाले जो है एक्शन लेते हैं। मेरा कहना यह है कि अगर कोई महिला सक्षम नहीं है और उसके पास जो है लीगल इंप्लीमेंटेशन नहीं है, तो उसके लिए उसको लीगल वे में जो है गाइडेंस क्यों नहीं मिलती है? आज हम क्या फोकस करते हैं कि सर 498 है, 406 है, DP एक्ट है, एक्सेट्रा एक्सेट्रा कानून बने हुए हैं। कानून तो है, बट वास्तव में उसका यूज कैसे होना चाहिए, इसके लिए ट्रेनिंग जो है प्रैक्टिकल क्यों नहीं होती है? तो इन सब बातों को लेकर जो है सोचना होगा, पार्लियामेंट को भी सोचना होगा, इंडियन जुडिशरी को भी। अंतोगत्वा समय ऐसा आ जाएगा कि इनका मिसयूज इतना बढ़ जाएगा कि लोग ये कहेंगे कि अब हमें बच्चा पैदा नहीं करना है, बच्चा मीन्स लड़का पैदा नहीं करना है। क्योंकि आज मैं जब लोगों से मिलता हूं और खासकर मेन साइड के लोगों से, मैं उनके दुखों को देखता हूं, वो वास्तव में जो है रोते हैं कि साहब अगर हमारी वाइफ जो है गलत कर रही है, अडल्ट्री में जी रही है, हमारे पास एविडेंसेस हैं, कोर्ट सुनने को तैयार नहीं होती है, कोर्ट जो है खर्चा बांध देती है, कोर्ट हमें जेल भेजती है। और कई बार कानून है दिल्ली हाईकोर्ट के, पटना हाईकोर्ट के, बॉम्बे हाईकोर्ट के, कोर्टें मानने तक को तैयार नहीं होती है। आज आपने गलत डिसीजन करके किसी को जेल भेज दिया तो आपका डिसीजन था, पर उसमें किसी की लाइफ और लिबर्टी बर्बाद हो गई, उसके लिए जिम्मेदार कौन होगा? क्या यहाँ पर इंडियन जुडिशरी की जिम्मेदारी नहीं बनती है? इसका मुझे जो है एक स्पष्टीकरण नोट के रूप में जो है मैंने इसको भेजा था हाई कोर्ट को भी, सुप्रीम कोर्ट को भी, पर कौन सुने? वो ये कहते हैं कि व्हाट वी आर डूइंग इज राइट, किंग कैन डू नो रॉन्ग। पर क्वेश्चन ये है कि आज प्रजा मर रही है तो राजा को भी इस पर ध्यान देना चाहिए, कम से कम उस पहलू के तरफ कि जहां लोग जो है मर रहे हैं, जहां लोगों के साथ जो है एक्सटॉर्शन हो रहा है, जहां लोगों के साथ जो है ब्लैकमेलिंग हो रही है, इवन काउंसिल जो है उनको प्रॉपर्ली गाइड नहीं करते हैं। जब वो थाने पहुंचते हैं तो थानेदार खुद कहता है कि वकील बुक मत कर, ये काले कोट वाले हैं, इनके चक्करों में जो है मत फंसो, ये बर्बाद कर देंगे, हमारे पास आ जाओ, हम सेटिंग से बैठा देंगे, हम अपने हिसाब से जो है वकील बुक करा देंगे। जब ये बात मजिस्ट्रेट के कानून तक पहुंचती है वो भी शांत रहता है। क्यों? क्या मजिस्ट्रेट कानून का प्रोटेक्टर नहीं है? रिसेंटली सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने ही कहा है कि मजिस्ट्रेट भी मौलिक अधिकारों का प्रोटेक्टर है, पर उसके बावजूद भी खामोशी क्यों? क्या उनको ये डर लगता है कि हम ये डिसीजन कर देंगे तो हमारे खिलाफ जो है डी खुल जाएगी या ऊपर वाली कोर्टें जो है कार्रवाई कर देंगी? अगर डर लगता है तो वास्तव में इंडियन कोर्ट्स को जो है बंद कर देना चाहिए। ये फिर ड्रामा क्यों? कम से कम मेरा ये कहना है कि कानून है तो कानून का मिसयूज हो रहा है तो कम से कम पनिशमेंट के प्रोविजन भी इंकॉर्पोरेट हो। आज आप देखिए कि एक लड़की घर में आ गई, वो लड़की जो है गलत है, कानून का मिसयूज करती है, लड़के वाले और उसके जो घर वाले हैं उसका पूरा हेरेसमेंट कर देगी। कितना बड़ा हथियार उसके हाथ में है, 498 है, 406 डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस, कोर्ट खर्चा बांधेगी, उसकी रिकवरीज करेगी, हर जगह हर समय उसके ऊपर कानून की तलवार जो है लटकी हुई है। पैसा नहीं दिया, अरेस्ट वारंट, कंप्लाइंस नहीं हुई, अरेस्ट वारंट, लड़की बयान देने नहीं आए तारीख पे तारीख, पर लड़का एक तारीख पे नहीं आया तो उसकी बेल जब्त। ये कैसा कानून है? तो वास्तव में ध्यान देने की जो है बहुत ही गंभीर आवश्यकता इस पर्सपेक्टिव में है। दूसरी इंपॉर्टेंट बात, आज जुडिशरी को ये देखना चाहिए कि जो मामले जो है घरेलू हैं, हालांकि इसमें कई लॉ पहले भी थे, उनको जो है बार बार रिव्यू किया गया। जो मामले घरेलू हैं, जो बैठ के सुलझ सकते हैं, तो कम से कम जजेस को एक स्पेशलिस्ट या एक्सपर्ट को जो है अपॉइंट करना चाहिए, वहां पर वो उन मैटर को जो है सुन सकें। और वास्तव मैटर जो है घरेलू है और बातचीत से जो है सुलझ सकते हैं, तो वहां पर जो है इस बारे में बातचीत करनी चाहिए और खुद को भी जो है एक पॉजिटिव इंटरवेंटर जो है एक्शन लेना चाहिए। तो कुल मिला के इन सब पर्सपेक्टिव पे जो है मैंने जूरी का जो है ध्यान आकर्षित करा। तो मैं आप सबसे उम्मीद करता हूं कि आप अपने अपने फील्ड में जो है एक्सपर्ट्स हैं, तो कम से कम लॉ को इस तरह से इंप्लीमेंट कराएं ताकि लोगों को प्रैक्टिकल जो है फायदा इसका हो, केवल थ्योरेटिकल जो है लॉ बन के नहीं रह जाए कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने उस केस में तो ये कहा था, सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने इस केस में फिर ये कहा, पर मेरे केस में क्या कहा ये मुझे खुद को नहीं पता। तो कम से कम ये तो नहीं हो, एक प्रिंसिपल हो जो स्टैटिक हो, जो सारी कोर्टें फॉलो करें। वो कोर्टें फॉलो नहीं करती हैं तो एटलीस्ट कोर्ट के खिलाफ भी जो है प्रोविजन हो कंटेम्प्ट का या परजुरी का, और माननीय सुप्रीम कोर्ट, माननीय हाई कोर्ट उसको इफेक्टिवली जो है इंप्लीमेंट कराए। तो इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ मैं अपनी बात को जो है विराम देता हूं और जूरी को, सॉरी लॉ ज्वाइंट को, एडवोकेट जूही को, विवेक सर को, जस्टिस बालाकृष्ण को जो है धन्यवाद देता हूं कि आपने इस तरह की कॉन्फ्रेंस कराई। और इस तरह की कॉन्फ्रेंस से जो है वास्तव में लोगों का एक मोटिवेशन बढ़ता है, लोगों को जो है लीगल नॉलेज मिलती है और कम से कम ये मालूम पड़ता है कि हमारे देश में जो है वास्तविकता के रूप में जो है क्या हो रहा है। थैंक यू।
Thank you, sir, for your enlightening words. Now I ask participants to ask their questions to the panelists. Ma'am, there is a question from Sunita Jeet. How far Section 498A affects in empowering women while we are focusing as it as a disadvantage of legal terrorism?
Yes, can you sir please repeat it?
How far Section 498A affects in empowering women while we are focusing as it as a disadvantage of legal terrorism?
So it is actually empowers the women, because there are many women who are victimized also. We can't say every woman is misusing the laws. So it is actually empowering them in the sense if somebody is actually victimized of the cruelty by the hands of the husband and the family member.